Welcome to the commentary booth where we watch and you guessed it, commentate on the week that was in movies and TV. I'm your host and play-by-play commentator Jamie Apps, and each week I'm joined by a rotating cast of colour commentators to help you find your next viewing treat. This week I'm joined by the founder of video game and pop culture podcast network 8-Bit. Welcome to the show, the hungry gamer himself, Brendan White.
Jamie, thank you for having me, good sir. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk all things we've been watching because I've got many opinions, some lukewarm, some pretty strong.
Brilliant. So for people that might not be aware of who you are and what 8-Bit is, do you want to just give us a little rundown on what that is?
Yeah, sure. So we're an independent video game and pop culture based outlet here in Australia. We've been doing things now for 7 years. So, we've sort of been doing a lot of podcasts, a bit of video content here or there when we could be bothered, but primarily we're one of the longest running networks and largest collections of content creators in the sort of ANZ space, covering that sort of video game and geek culture niche. So it's good fun. Got a good collection of people I work with, in parallel, and we release content every week, and sometimes 2 or 3 times, depending on what's there to talk about or have some strong opinions for. But you can check out all our stuff at 8bit.net, or if you don't want to do the 8-bit wordplay, you can do videogamesandculture.com as our new home for everything there. So it's anything geeky and nerdy and gaming, TV, film, anime, even food related, you can find it all there.
Brilliant. And what's the big thing recently? I think that would be is it the God of War Ragnarok spoiler cast? Is that the biggest thing on the site at the moment?
I think so, yeah. So we just dropped a 2 hour and 20 minute deep dive on God of War Ragnarok. It was a very, very, very beefy discussion with myself, Jono, and Benny there talking all things Ragnarok and how great it is. So, anyone that's been on the fence about playing or getting into that game, I know you dropped a written review on your feed as well. So if you don't want to read and instead just want to listen to 3 guys rant and rave about how great it is, you can check that out on the Hungry Gamers RSS feed or right there on the homepage, videogamesandculture.com.
Yeah, I was blown away by that game because I hadn't played the 2018 version, so I was I was coming in fresh, and
wow.
I was still amazed by how good that game was.
It's very special, and it's going to be talked about in such high regard for many, many years to come, I think. What Santa Monica Studios put out a couple of weeks ago now is as close to perfection as you can find in that video game space. So, anyone that has a PlayStation, you're doing yourself a disservice by not playing that game.
Mm-hmm. And the hot debate at the moment, God of War Ragnarok or Elden Ring for Game of the Year, where did you fall?
I'm falling, lukewarm spoilers before we record some stuff with the Hungry Gamers, but I'm falling in the God of War Ragnarok camp. Elden Ring, it's very special, and I know it's going to win a lot of game awards, awards from various outlets all over the world, and I'm not going to besmirch that because it's very well deserving, but I don't know, I love the more direct storytelling in God of War Ragnarok as opposed to, Elden Ring has a narrative and characters and lore, but it's not as forthcoming with that information. Like, the world itself is very special, and From Software are very talented and skilled at what they do, but for me and what I look for in gaming, God of War sort of leans more into what I'm hungry for. So, Ragnarok for me, but Elden Ring I think is going to win a lot of awards, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a 50-50 toss-up on which one gets it, depending on who's voting and their own personal preferences.
That's it. But we've been pretty spoiled. Like, we've had a lot of great games drop in 2022 so far. So, there's a lot of unique gameplay slices for everybody out there.
And then, so on to the sort of main topic for this week. We're exploring a galaxy far, far away as we review the latest Disney Plus Star Wars series, Andor. On a top level, where did you fall with this one? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Somewhere in the middle?
I absolutely loved everything about this show. Like full disclosure, I had to go back and rewatch the first 2 episodes when I was first starting to get into it because I didn't give it its full attention. Because it dropped those first 3 all in one hit. And I'm like, oh, cool, I'll sink my teeth into this one night. And I was faffing about on my phone and not giving it like my full mental bandwidth. So I'm like, shit, what's happening? Who are these characters? What's going on? So I went and cycled back and rewatched number 2, and then since then I've been hooked. Like, this is some of the best Star Wars content that has ever been made, in my opinion, especially live action. Like, some of the Clone Wars stuff's pretty special as well, but this is a home run in every sense of the word, and I am hankering for more of this, hopefully in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I thought this was amazing, and yeah, like you mentioned, it's not your typical Star Wars fare where you can kind of just sit there on your phone and pay attention here or there, but like, this is much deeper in the storytelling, and you have to really focus on this one. It starts slow, but is ultimately worth the payoff after the 12 episodes.
Definitely. Like, yeah, just grit and bear those first couple of, like, the first 2 episodes where it is a lot of heavy world building and character introductions and things, but after that the pace just goes, they're doing the Kessel Run in maybe like 6 parsecs after those first 2 or 3 episodes, and the pacing is just fantastic from there, and I'm just enamored with everything about this show at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, a little introduction on what the show is for people that may not have checked it out yet. It's a prequel series to the Star Wars Rogue One movie, which is obviously in itself a prequel to the original Star Wars films. Created by Tony Gilroy, follows the journey of Cassian Andor and the moments which ultimately lead him to joining the rebellion. Set 5 years before Rogue One. Like we said, it's kind of all about him, how he comes to join the rebellion and become such a crucial member of that group, and the ultimate downfall of the Death Star. It's the 4th live-action Star Wars series. We've had 1 season so far. It's planned for 2 and has always been planned for 2, which I'm very glad they did that. They didn't kind of create 1 season and go, we'll see how it goes and maybe we'll get a 2nd season. I'm glad that they have that vision in mind.
I'm very happy about that too. It just gives the show writers enough bandwidth and runway to tell the story that they want to tell in its complete, fully realized state. Because yeah, there's nothing worse than they go, oh, like this could just be a standalone one shot, and then they make a ton of money and they're like, hey, we need more of that. And like, shit, how are we going to get more narrative out of this? So it's really cool that Tony and even his brother Dan, who tackles some of the writing in Andor, have got a vision, and they're going to set that out over maybe, I guess, another 12 episodes after this. So 24 episodes of Andor-esque storytelling to come. And I cannot wait. It's just a shame if we're going to have to wait a couple of years before we get the 2nd season. So I'm very impatient when it comes to content. I need it all, and I need it now, but it's going to have to bide our time with a whole host of other Star Wars related things until we get Andor season 2.
Yeah, unfortunately, ideally we would have got the 2nd season in a year's time, but they've only just started filming in London, so probably 2024 is more likely.
Yeah, like it's not like we're short on content. Like it's almost like you get burnt out at the moment with the amount of film and TV that's just churning, whether it be mainline Star Wars stuff or Marvel or things on Netflix that are just popping up left, right, and center. Like, we're never short on things to consume. It's just when I get so laser focused on an IP that just grabs me, I just need it all now. But plenty of other distractions between now and 2024, I'd imagine, when we get season 2.
Yep. Yeah, like even Disney Plus, there's so much on just Disney Plus itself, but then you look outside that and you've got the Amazon shows like The Boys and Invincible, and then Netflix, you've got all the shows over there, and it's like there's so much competition for what am I going to watch now. It's hard to actually watch everything that comes out.
It's kind of intimidating. Like, you and I both operate in the same realm where we're trying to create content on all these new shows and films and video games that are coming out every 5 seconds, it feels like, and it's really difficult to stay on top of all the current trends. So like, it's tough sometimes where you almost feel yourself being forced to watch or play things just to sort of stay relevant. But something like Andor, like, it certainly wasn't a punish for me to watch these 12 episodes. Like, after those first few episodes, it just hooked me and I was just along for the ride. So it's it's a minor problem to have, I guess. You know, it's a bit of a gripe that's not a gripe, where it's like there's too many things to watch. But yeah, like woe is us, really, right?
Yep. I'm also super glad that they did extend this out to 12 episodes rather than what we have been getting recently with Disney Plus shows of like 6. Mm-hmm. That's been a gripe of mine for the last year or two, where they've been putting out the 6-episode seasons of shows. It's like, this isn't a long enough time to get a fully fledged story out there. Like, I would have hated to see this show condensed down to 6 episodes.
And can you imagine, like, the 6th episode was the Eye in Andor, which was the highest episode, which was just about my favorite episode in this season. And imagine if either that episode was compressed to, like, a fraction of the size, or that's where the season ended. Like, that'd be, yeah, a nightmare for fans. So it is nice to allow them to build this story out and let these moments breathe instead of just going from set piece to set piece. Like, there is a lot of talking and a lot of, you know, backdoor dealings going on. Like, it's a slower paced show in comparison to some of the other ones on Disney Plus or in the Star Wars world, but it's very different to all that too, and it stands apart in the best kind of ways.
Yeah, it's much more spy espionage, maybe like a little sprinkling of the Game of Thrones in there as well, which I think is what made this such a compelling watch. You never sort of knew who was good, who was bad, whether they were spies or double agents, which was a very interesting dynamic.
I think, and that's the sign of good storytelling. Like, when you can root for both sides, you know, the good, the bad, and then the grey area where a lot of these characters operate in, when you can be invested in those characters, it's just, yeah, the sign of good content and good media. And yeah, I like that it's very un-Star Wars. Like, there's not a Skywalker in sight, and thank God. You know, if we can not see another Skywalker for like a decade plus, I'd be very happy. And it's nice that we're sort of telling stories about different areas of this universe that you know, are well worth discovering, and you know, getting more of the backstories with some of these characters that lead up to Rogue One, which is just about one of the best Star Wars films in the entire collection so far. Like, it's right up there with Empire as maybe number 2 for me. And so it's nice to see all these things and the set pieces that came to be before Rogue One, and then obviously the original Star Wars film as well.
Yeah, Rogue One is my personal favourite Star Wars film, which is, I guess, probably a bit blasphemous for the original trilogy, but yeah, I loved that movie. And I really enjoyed that this wasn't just your cliched, hey, do you remember this from Star Wars show? Like, I don't recall seeing as a lightsaber in this entire.
No, there's not one at all, and that's one thing I love. Like, I'm a fan of whether it be media or just people in general. Like, when they're respecting of their audience's time, like they're not just going to the low hanging fruit or back to the well. And it's like, yeah, there's a lightsaber, or they'll just like force feed in characters or references just for the sake of getting those cheap pops. So it's nice that it was a bit more of a mature way to tell the story, instead of it just going, oh, look, we got to shoehorn in Darth Vader there, or there's a reference or a reference about the Force that's shoehorned in as well. Like, it's none of that. It's just a straight, dramatic, high intensity, like you said, it's like a spy thriller, and it's got the best parts of, yeah, Game of Thrones and House of Cards and all these high drama, high stakes television shows and films that are out there where you just never know what's going to come next.
And what did you think of the way that it was sort of split up across the 12 episodes? Like, it kind of felt like 3 sort of distinct story arcs that ultimately all work together as one cohesive piece, but you could sit down and watch this in 4-episode chunks.
Yeah, it certainly it was interesting how they sort of laid out the storytelling, where there was obviously a lot of flashbacks utilised throughout the 12 episodes, giving us backstory on certain characters and maybe why they are the way they are, or why they despise this group or that group, or vice versa. So I liked that we did get a lot of sort of time jump with certain characters. And it's funny, like we ultimately know the outcome of what's roughly or potentially going to happen with these 2 seasons, because we've got Rogue One, we've got Star Wars films after that, so we've got a rough idea of where this show might ultimately end up, but there's still so much guesswork and uncertainty, which is kind of crazy to think, even though we know the end result to a degree. So I like that they are jumping around and seeing, young Cassian and where he's sort of orphaned and taken into this sort of smuggler life really early, and it's just embedded in his DNA. And then sort of seeing, certain other characters, why they maybe hate the Empire for this reason or that. Or then we get other characters where there's still so much sort of secrecy shrouded around their intentions, like Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen. Like, I don't know what's going on here, and like, where's that character ultimately going to take us in season 2? Like, he's one of the standouts throughout the screen time. Anytime he's on screen, I'm just like in awe of his presence and the coolness. Like the whole space scene where he's in his ship and he's getting, potentially about to get boarded by the Empire. And then it was just like the most metal, like, bro down, awesome moment where he gets out of that. And some of like the monologues he has, like, and the justification, like he's very much an anti-hero type. Like, he doesn't fit that rebel trope where they're just, good to the core. Like, there is some darkness and roughness in him where he's willing to sacrifice people for the end goal, which is something you don't really ever see coming from sort of anyone to do with the rebels. They're all very much cookie cutter, just good and good, honest people, where he's sort of in the grey, which I love. And it just weaves into that storytelling effortlessly, where we do have these three sort of siloed chunks of the story, but it all interconnects, and then you see parts come together at the very end. And even Adria Arjona, who plays Bix, like, you get her right at the start, and I'm like, she's becoming a bit of a name. Like, she's starting to pop up in a lot of great and less than great things, like Morbius. But would you not talk about that right now? She gets some big moments early, and then like nothing right until the end. But then they bring her back in. She's going to play a major part in season 2, and they start sort of showing just some of the atrocities that the Empire will go to try and get their man, or get their end goal fully realized. And it's just I just like that weaving. I know I've sort of gone off on a tangent as far as the silos of the story, but I like that at first it doesn't feel like it's all going to tie together, but then by the end of it, it's all in one basket with a nice bow on top, and you're like, man, that was very, very, very intelligent storytelling.
Yeah, particularly when we transition from that first little story arc of the heist to then the second arc with the prison section. At first I was like, well, this is a weird transition. Like, these feel like two totally incongruent stories within the one show, but they ultimately managed to weave it back in and makes sense at the end.
You got a feel for Andor there, right? Like, where they've just done the heist and he's laying low on some like tropical beach planet, living his best life. It looks like he's got himself a partner, and they're just, living the tourist life. And then he gets imprisoned for nothing, and his world just completely gets turned upside down as he ends up on Narkina 5, which is this like slave labor prison planet. And it is so like depressing and dread inducing, and how they've all got their day counter. It's like, oh, I've got 2,000 more days left until I'm free, in air quotes. But it's a really big change of pace and shift of tone, where it was like, yeah, I'm just going to duck out my love to get some milk, and he's walk along the beach, and then like, you're going to jail for 6 years for doing nothing.
Yeah, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, and it's really telling, but yeah, it just shifts gears into this, like, they've done a heist and now they've got a prison escape going on. Like, they're constantly on the run, or just escaping by the skin of their teeth. Most of the characters, some of them tragically pass away during this season, which is, it's probably going to sound dark, but it's kind of good to see heroes actually get slain in a Star Wars film. Like, for the most part, it's always a lot of near death and, just made it out of there, luckily, and it's always high fives. But this is very, very grounded and realistic. Like, I've never seen that amount of stormtroopers actually hit their target before.
Yeah, these were the good stormtroopers for sure.
Yeah, like, they did not miss. And there is bodies, especially in the finale in Rick's Road, there is bodies flying every which way. And it's intense to watch, because it's not just, it's not baby's first isn't anymore. Like, it's a very mature story that they're telling, and the bodies are going and they're getting flown around, and it's very very emotion inducing, that's for sure.
Even the way they like kill off some characters too, like yeah, these stormtroopers, they're pinpoint accurate and one shot kill soldiers, but then like we also get people just die from tragic circumstances, like you mentioned, just at the end of the heist, they're flying away, they think they're scot-free, and then there's a little shift of some cargo and someone just goes out like that, and it's like, oh wow, there's no heroic endings for everybody. Like
that moment in the back of that, when they've narrowly escaped with 40 million trade credits or whatever, I can't remember the exact number, and then seeing that poor little mate just get completely crushed, and I knew like they sort of foreshadowed that a little bit, where he's sort of giving some speeches to Cassian and sort of trying to let him know of the broader stakes at play here, and I'm like, oh, please don't. But then I knew when you saw him get crushed by this big cachet of money, which was some pretty vivid imagery in itself. Like, it was nice to get him to go out on a high point like that. Like, he was sort of that beacon of hope for that band of misfits as they were planning that big heist. But it hit. That was probably the biggest loss in the show for me, as far as from an emotional impact on myself personally. Like, it was so crushing when you saw little Nemec get crushed, and then Vel gives Cassian his manifesto, and then it goes full circle and he's listening to it in the finale. Like, I like that there was all these little breadcrumbs and connective tissues that sort of were not just throwaways. Like, it was referenced and shown on the screen a lot throughout the entirety of those 12 episodes.
I thought it was super fitting that he went out being crushed by money as well, when his whole like manifesto has like very sort of socialist underpinnings. Like, it's everybody should be equal. We don't need all this money. Like, we need to just look after we need the bare minimums essentially. And then he dies by being crushed by an exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah, it was heavy, and it really deflated the mood watching that episode. Like, it was like, oh my god, they've narrowly got out. Like, you saw a lot of guys in that sort of heist team getting gunned down really quickly, and then Skeen tries to do the old double cross and say, mate, we can get out of here together, we can split this money 50-50 and disappear. Then Cassian just straight away just guns him down, like no remorse and no hesitation, which was kind of cool to see those rebel seeds further get planted into him with actions like that. But Nemec's loss in a huge episode, like, that's the biggest episode for me in the entire 12, but that was sort of the standout moment amongst many standout moments.
And then like some of the other characters, obviously the main one, Diego Luna, reprising his role as Cassian Andor from Rogue One. What did you think of his character? I thought he did an amazing performance again.
I thought he did a great performance, and like his portrayal of Cassian, like he's very subdued. Like, he's not high energy with his vocal delivery, but he's just got this, like, he's only like a smaller guy in stature, but he's just got such a big presence on screen, and the emotion that he can convey through a couple of words or an expression really carries the scenes that he's in. And yeah, he's perfect as Cassian Andor, and I was curious to know if he was sort of big enough to carry an entire series. Like, he's got obviously a great supporting cast as well, don't get me wrong, but he's the focal point. Like, the show's named after him, for God's sakes. But he sort of steps into those boots, I wouldn't say effortlessly, but the portrayal he does is very special. And yeah, the roller coaster of emotions, and just you can see the tear in him where he's like, I could just lay low and disappear forever, but there's this bigger problem that's starting to become more and more that could impact my life and my family and the friends and the people I care about around me. What do I do? And just seeing him sort of start to evolve episode by episode or scene by scene as a leader and a hero, in air quotes, is awesome, because he just assumes whatever role or whatever is required of him, and he does that in a whole host of ways in this show. But yeah, he was a standout from a lead actor perspective, yeah, Diego Luna, he's a very, very talented man.
Mm-hmm. And I thought this show did a great job of like showing that evolution of the character as well to what we do ultimately get in Rogue One, where he's this accomplished spy. Like unknowingly, he's kind of been in this fight against the Empire from his childhood when they came over and just destroyed his home planet through their mining projects. But then, yeah, we get to watch him go from, I don't want to be involved in the rebellion, I don't want to be a revolutionary, to ultimately just being like, I'll do whatever it takes to get these people out of my life.
I completely agree. And it's nice to see that they didn't just go, yep, he's just jumping in and embracing this role straight away. Like you can see the internal conflict and him just trying to be blind to all these things. You know, it's not my war, it's not my fight. Just get me my money. I want to get out of here. I've done my job, and things like that. When at the end there, where he was sort of talking to Vex, and she didn't believe him about Screen trying to double cross, and you know, he's like, I've done my part. This isn't my war, and he just wanted to go live a simpler life. But just the gravity of everything that he's experienced as a kid up until now, and even just you know, having Marva, his you know his adopted mother, who's you know, I guess one of the catalysts to this uprising for the rebels, like having her speech broadcast through the town there after her passing, like that was, I think, the fuel that ultimately stokes this big fire and really sets the Star Wars that the majority of us all know and love into motion. Yeah,
it was kind of just, he was basically pummeled into submission to becoming a rebellion fighter, and I thought it was just amazingly done. And I loved that, like I mentioned, we didn't get a bunch of sort of nostalgia plays, but we did get some little Easter eggs that tied back into the Rogue One movie. Like seemingly every time something bad happens to Cassian, he's looking out over the horizon, whether that's on a beach or on a mountaintop somewhere. But like the moment where he finds out that Marva has passed away, that hit me pretty hard, where he's standing on the beach looking at the sunset, and I was like, oh, that echoes so strongly back to Rogue One, which was crazy.
Yeah. The nods they had, I like that they were subtle and they weren't forced. Like it all felt part of the broader picture here, and the cinematography in this show, like on that talking point, like some of the mixture of not only the CG and green screen work they've done, but some of the real life sets and locations they've used were absolutely gorgeous. So it's one of the prettiest things in the Star Wars universe I've seen, and I'm happy that we didn't get, you know, we get a ton of desert planet based stuff. It was like lush and green, and then we had a lot of more naturally areas and planets that hadn't really been canvassed too heavily. Like, you know, we stayed far away from Tatooine and Hoth and all those tropes that they love to sort of go back and retread. But yeah, it was nice. They had a lot of deep thought, perspective based scenes with these wide vistas all the time. But it, I think it really hammered home the isolation and the loneliness that not only Cassian feels constantly with this push-pull, but a lot of the main characters were feeling. Like there's a lot of isolated characters, even though they're all working together or working towards the same thing. There's a lot of people stuck in a lot of singular traps, it feels like.
Yep. And with that cinematography, like they also used that to sort of split up these three arcs as well. Like that first arc is on the wide open plains and like lush green plains of like, looks kind of like a Northern Ireland, I guess, where they were filming. And then we get into the prison arc, which is just white and sterile and sort of like a hospital. And then we go back to his home planet, and it's, kind of concrete and bricks and just red, earthy tones. I was like, I did like that they split it up that way.
Yeah, it was sort of clear start and end points as far as stories beginning and ending or being put on hold. But yeah, it certainly made the show feel a little different and fresh. And even those, like you mentioned, the sterile hospital-like feeling of the prison planet there, it was just really unsettling, especially for me. Like I hate hospitals and I hate going into them for a whole host of reasons, but seeing it then play out on screen, and seeing this Narkina 5, slave labor prison planet was really cool. And it was very Empire, don't get me wrong, but just seeing these poor people just getting beaten into submission every day with this monotonous work, and then the false, carrots that they're getting fed about, if you win, you get this, or you get some time shortened, or, just work harder.
Flavor in your food.
Yeah, like through your food food hose, I should say. Yeah, we just like, what a way to live. But I loved it, and just seeing Andy Serkis sort of sneak in that little arc as Kino Loy, like he was one of the highlights of this show for me, and him getting a couple of episodes to really flex his on-screen presence and acting chops was really nice to see as well.
And the end of that sequence is heartbreaking with his character as well, when they finally get to escape and they're on this prison is totally surrounded in the middle of the ocean, but he can't swim. And I was like, oh my God, that's so heartbreaking. It's like, it took him the whole time that they were there to finally, right, we're doing this. We're getting out. This is beyond ridiculous at the moment. And then when he finally does, he gets out and he's like, oh wait, I can't.
Yeah, it was soul destroying, because like he's a character at first and you meet him and you kind of hate him because he's a yes man for the Empire, and he's drinking that Kool-Aid and whatever else, but then you see those layers get stripped back when he starts to accept the truth and the fact that no one's ever getting off this planet. And then he gets to the point to potentially get off that planet. He's like, I can't swim, and he's stuck at the top of this giant tower, and Cassian's trying to potentially help, and then he gets pushed off because all these prisoners are just rushing towards the edge. But I like that we didn't see him die or get captured or whatnot. I think we're going to get more of Kino Loy in the future, because you can't kill him off screen like that. No. For sure. Like I'd imagine, if you or I were in that state and we were beside him and he said, I can't swim, we'd be like, just jump in and we'll grab an arm each and we'll all swim to shore together. So I'm hoping some other undisclosed character did that and we see more of Kino, because he was great. And that speech he did over the Empire PA system when he's sort of firing up this uprising was one of the high points of this show.
Totally. What did you think of the design of the prison? I thought it was really cool, really unique. We get that aerial shot at the very end, and it's like very much the Galactic Empire logo, essentially, but inside the prison as well with the electrified floors. I thought it was such a well thought out and designed prison.
It was very smartly designed, and like mentioning that electrified floors thing, like they're not in prison cells with bars, so it sort of conveys that there's like this false sense of freedom where it's like, no, I'm just in my room, it's fine. But then it's like, you step on the floor and it's electrified, you're dead. So it's like, I like that they sort of play with human emotions there, where it's like, I'm free, but I'm not. But you are in this bleak, white, bland complex that you're never going to get out of. And that sort of aerial shot in the prison escape scene was stunning. And seeing the Empire logo done, like it was the ultimate just like egomaniac type of shot, where it's like, the Empire are that high on themselves, they're fashioning buildings on their own logo and paraphernalia and whatever else. Like it's great. But then you see that little contrast where all the prisoners are escaping, and then you see all the Empire stuff all hiding underneath the door with the light off, like because they don't want to be found. I thought that was a really powerful moment. But that building, it made me uncomfortable, but in all the right ways. Like I just thought, like if I was stuck in there, that place would just wear on your soul daily. And I guess that was what the intention of that building was to do. And I think it certainly achieved that goal. Yeah,
I think it was kind of designed to stop people just of essentially having any sort of free thought where they just go, I'm just going to go through the motions and build these parts that I have no idea what they're for, which I loved what they were ultimately for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very smartly presented, where like throughout that whole time they're building the parts to ultimately create the big old Death Star, and we get like the end like post-credit scene of this thing, and it was gorgeous. It was really cool to see the big Death Star planet building weapon, whatever you want to describe it or define it as, coming together out in zero gravity. but it was a little bit of a meh post-credit stinger for me. I'm like, it was a cool scene, but I'm like, I wanted something more, but it still hasn't got me any less hyped for season 2, that's for sure.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest like nostalgia play that they had in the entire show.
Yeah, and I guess like you saying it like that, it makes sense. It's like it gets fans old and new equally as hyped, because that object, the Death Star, you know, it transcends sort of pop culture. Everybody knows what it is. Like, you could show a photo of that to 99% of people on Earth and be like, yeah, I know exactly what that is. So it was a big touchstone to get people hyped for next season.
And something else I just thought of with the escape scene, when all the prisoners are swimming away, I loved how that kind of looked like it was an explosion had come out of the side of that prison, and it was just like the smoke trails coming off it.
Yeah, a bit of foreshadowing to what will happen in future Star Wars films, maybe, you reckon?
Yeah, like it's just basically, look, this is the start of the Empire crumbling on itself.
Yeah. But they're oblivious to the vulnerabilities and everything at this stage. They're all just very, very proud and feeling very indestructible, which I like. I like that there's this arrogance with every member of the Empire you meet. They're all just thinking they're untouchable and bigger than Ben-Hur. And sort of, like you mentioned, seeing those cracks start to sort of present themselves in various scenes or moments, it's nice touches.
So what did you think of the finale and sort of how somber and like very much like a funeral it felt, while still continuing the story that we were being told?
I think it was a perfect ending to this first half of this story they're telling. Like, yeah, it was very reflective, I think, for a lot of characters, both on the Rebels and the Empire side. You're seeing a lot of people question the future for one reason or another, or fearful for their life for one reason or another, and a lot of goodbyes and I guess hellos at the same time. Like the ending with seeing Bix and the team sort of shoot off in the ship and escape that sort of war-torn country, but then Cassian sort of, I guess, saying goodbye to his life and you know, acknowledging and paying his respects to his mother and the passing, but also then taking that next step forward with Luthen sort of saying, kill me or take me in and train me, really. And it was kind of cool, and it was some very, what's the word? Like, it was subdued storytelling. Like, there was some big action moments, and there was a lot of just great one-on-one talking points with certain characters, and just seeing the stakes just get raised slightly with each interaction was really cool. And it was heartfelt, and it was tense, and it was exciting, and it was gripping. It was all of the good adjectives you could think of as far as summarizing this finale. Like, it felt like everything was leading up to this moment. Like the funeral brought every character, good and bad, together to that one planet for this big showdown, and all of them getting certain moments, whether it be a hero-based moment or a goodbye or a redemption story. And yeah, the Gilroy brothers, like Tony and Dan, putting this together, it felt like it was very expertly crafted and having these thrilling moments, and you know, there was no punches pulled, I don't think. Like, it was coming at you thick and fast in a whole host of ways, both from an action and an emotional sort of perspective, and I was there for every second of it. What about you, Jamie?
I thought the funeral procession, that's when it like really hit me that yes, this is a legitimate funeral and it feels like a funeral.
And how beautiful was it? Like, the whole city shut down, and the, you know, the streets were just full of people all paying their respects, but also, I think, waiting for that next penny, or I guess bomb, to drop, you could say. You know, being a little heavy-handed there with that pun, but yeah, it was really, really beautifully shot, and everyone that was involved, and just not only, I guess, acknowledging the past and the passing, but then looking towards the future with this uprising, this big old riot.
And yeah, like the music that they played throughout that, I thought that was perfectly incorporated. I thought that we got, like, with Luthen, we kind of got the whole gamut of his story in this one episode, where he comes back to Ferrix, and you think he's here to like look out and make sure that Andor gets away. but then we learn that no, he's there to kill Andor as well, just so that the secrets can't be then drug out of him by the Empire. And then in the end, he actually seems to come back and take Andor in. I thought that was so cool to get his whole story. We got to witness it throughout the 12 episodes, but we also got this really condensed highlights version essentially in the final episode as well.
It was the one part that was the craziest to me was obviously we had the scene with Saw Gerrera there and you know Forrest Whitaker doing fantastic on screen and that interaction with Luthen was great, but like obviously they were talking about 30 people. It's fine. It's nothing in the grander picture as far as the war against the Empire. And then that was just referenced as like a clef note right at the start of that episode where they're like, there was a skirmish here and 30 rebel soldiers have died. And it was just like a throwaway. Like I thought when they had that interaction with Saw and Luthen, that was going to be part of the finale. Maybe that would be part of the big payoff with another big war scene or a big epic battle. But instead it was just a nothing line, just emphasizing, I guess, how little some people's lives mean in this sort of Star Wars universe. Like, you know, 30 people, they're just a byline now in this script. Don't worry. Moving on. Like it's always moving forward to the grander picture and the grander end goals of the rebels, which is, yeah, it's so much darker than just about anything else we've seen in the Star Wars universe, but it's so relatable. And even though, yeah, it's in a galaxy far, far away and thousands of years, I guess, in the future to where we might be, but like it's still on hitting themes and beats that we can all relate to and empathize with and put ourselves into all these characters' shoes. Yeah,
definitely. And we mentioned sort of Bix. I thought her portrayal in this episode, again, was phenomenal. Like when we see her earlier in the season getting interrogated, the way that she plays that moment was fantastic. But then when we now come to her at the end of the series, clearly traumatized and broken by what she's been through. Wow.
Yeah, she is. She's shattered. And yeah, Adria Arjona, who plays Bix, really, really great portrayal of the character. And I'm looking forward to seeing, I guess, her getting slowly put back together in the next season. Because, yeah, she sort of bookended the series, really. She was in those opening episodes and then at the back end, but there was sort of a nothing in between there. But, yeah, anytime she was on camera, she was certainly a force and very, very emotional. And seeing her and Cassian reunited as he saves her from sort of that interrogation room or that, you know, that hostage area was a touching moment.
And you mentioned the bomb drop in this episode. What did you think of that moment and how, like, the galactic soldier kicking over the droid? That was kind of the spark that set this all off. It was like him covering up the hologram was fine, but when he kicked the droid, everyone was like, no, you don't do that.
Yeah, like you could see that everyone in that funeral procession, like, yeah, everyone was on tenterhooks. Like the nerves were very raw and it didn't feel like it was going to take much to set that off. And I really liked that episode opened up with the bomb creating scene and sort of showing the intricacies of what was going into that. So it was kind of nice that they set that tone early that this was going to play a major part in this finale, and it certainly did. But yeah, any droid abuse, like I think we can all, like, it's almost like kicking a puppy, right? And and no one likes animal-based violence, so I think using that in this world really was the nice like match that started this fire and really set this thing ablaze. Because yeah, any animal or droid-based just like violence in Star Wars or any science fiction really gets up my goat, and I'd go to war for that droid, that's for sure.
And do you feel like there was other people in that scene that knew that bomb was there and was a potential threat, or do you think it was this one character's sort of, this is how I'm going to do my part in this war rebellion?
Yeah. I was thinking that as it was playing out. Like, I was wondering if this character, this was just their way to try and get back at the Empire and sort of have their name and memory known forever. But I'm wondering if they're going to play out to be a member of the Rebel alliance, I guess you could say. So I'm assuming they're probably part of the bigger picture, and there was probably a few people in that crowd that were looking to incite this riot and incite this uprising. And yeah, they were all part of this. Maybe they didn't know it was going to go out to that extent, but I feel it wasn't just an isolated incident just with the one person.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if like other people knew that there was a bomb close to them, like nearby, at hand, ready to go. But I can definitely see that there was people there. They were just waiting for what's the moment, and we're just going to try and get these people out of our town, off our planet. Like, we've had enough of this.
Yeah, it was really nice to see sort of this community come together and stand as one. And even though like they had no weapons for the most part, like they were just cannon fodder in this scene, yet it didn't stop them from fighting and standing up for the people around them and what they believe in. It was really powerful stuff, actually. Some of the imagery there was very, very well shot and gorgeous, and will sort of stand out as highlights, I think, in that Star Wars universe for a while. And
you mentioned it being dark too, like where it just like lingers on dead bodies as well after somebody's been shot. I thought that took it to that extra level of, this isn't just your fun, happy-go-lucky, these are cannon fodder Star Wars characters. Like,
yeah,
this is someone and they're dead.
Yeah, it was certainly like, yeah, it's not the traditional Disney Star Wars of old. It was definitely, we're not romanticizing violence. We're not trying to dismiss the brutality of war. They were like, nah, here it is. Here's a lifeless body. Here's their face that's, no longer breathing. They didn't shy away from showing these big moments to really, I think, emphasize the atrocities that the Empire are capable of.
And then I think to close out, there's like one other major character across the 12 episodes, Mon Mothma and her cousin Vel Sartha, both sort of involved in this rebellion without either of them knowing that the other one is involved. I thought that was a really cool dynamic playing out between those two.
Yeah, like both the sisters sort of playing double agents in a way and doing what they can to derail the Empire movement. The two actresses that played both those roles were fantastically cast, and they portrayed those characters great. And they're sort of both desperate and both trying to find their place in different regards. Like, it's kind of heartbreaking to know that Mon Mothma is pretty much just sacrificing her young daughter for the greater good. Mm-hmm. Really, introducing her daughter to the mob boss's son, and getting into bed with them to try and help spark this uprising even further. So it was nice to see, and like the penny dropped for me, obviously, when she comes back and meets her sister at home. Like, I had no idea that they were interconnected until that moment. Like, they did the full heist in the Eye episode, and then after that, yeah, she's laying low and sees a sister and is sort of trying to play off just their own respective innocences, yet they're both very, very well deep into so much espionage and high stakes affairs. It was a nice little foil to the broader narrative, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's got me looking forward to the moment where they find out, oh, you're involved in this? What?
Yeah. It's going to be like the rival Spider-Man pointing sort of meme you see around the internet for sure. But just the cast as a whole were really great. And like, you only get fleeting moments with certain cast members, but like anytime just about anybody was on screen, they absolutely dominated. Like Deidre Miro, like played by Denise Goff, I think you pronounce her surname,
yep.
Who's one of the sort of uprising, or one of the young stalwarts in the Empire, and she's trying to prove herself in a very much a male-dominated Empire industry for higher management, and seeing her just sort of aggressively push and not sort of be persuaded that her ideas and logic is wrong. It's nice to see her stick to her guns, but she's also like, she plays the role of just this hard son of a bitch that just will not let it go really, really well. But like, it's a testament to her as an actor as well.
Another talking point I thought with Mon Mothma was the moment where she picks up her husband from where he was apparently gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that he was actually gambling, or is that them knowing that their driver is listening in and spying on them? So this is their way of sort of letting the Empire know that this is where this money has gone?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of misdirection there. Like the husband, he feels pretty clueless, and he's just like, I don't know what he does for a living, but it feels like she's the breadwinner here, being part of a member of parliament, and he's just the trophy husband or whatever we want to call him. And he's just cruising around, going to all these parties and you know, shaking hands, kissing babies and all that. But I feel there's probably a little bit more strategy in this marriage that will sort of play out in the next season, because I feel they've got to be tactful, right? Like, they can't just be happy-go-lucky and just, you know, saying things off the cuff, because it's clear that the driver is on the take and could derail this whole thing if they're not careful.
Yeah, and I feel like she's been so much more careful up until that point, and a little off-the-cuff line of, oh, we want privacy, isn't sort of enough to make her think, okay, I'm safe now, to start talking about being involved in some crazy espionage. But yeah, she's just kind of like, stop gambling, and like, this is kind of her idea of like, no, if you're looking into my finances and there's all of a sudden all this money missing, it's because he's sneaking the money out and gambling it away. So there's no need to look any further.
Deflecting that spotlight, and maybe the husband's going to be a sacrificial lamb. Who knows? Like, he doesn't seem to add much value to that relationship. He was very, very on the nose in every scene he was in, just about. But got some early Obi-Wan like Padawan vibes from him in his cloak and his little pony, like his top knot ponytail and everything. But you know, I don't know. Maybe he's a distant cousin. Who knows?
Yep. And then just to close out the episode, a couple of little like fun facts that I found. In episode 4, the Coruscant spaceport, we mentioned sort of the cool locations, was filmed at the McLaren Technology Center, so like the headquarters for the car company and F1.
That's kind of cool.
Like, having watched Drive to Survive, I kind of knew that building quite well. Like, they go to there a few times. And in that scene, I looked down, I was like, this building is familiar and I don't know why. And then I saw it on Twitter, somebody put up a side-by-side screenshot. I was like, okay, yep, I did know that building for a reason.
That's really cool.
And then streaming-wise, this show has been incredibly successful already. According to the stream aggregator Reelgood, it was the most watched program across all streaming platforms during the week of September 28th.
Okay.
Which is promising given that there's 2 seasons, but then, yeah, also a little bit disappointing that, or for Disney, I guess, knowing that this has been so successful, but we've limited ourselves to 2 seasons, particularly because there is this only this 5-year window to tell this story in.
Yeah, it's bittersweet knowing that this is going to come to an end after 24 episodes or whatever, but I hope this is just maybe like a jumping off point to just get Tony Gilroy more involved in the broader Star Wars universe, like get him out of the Rogue One Andor subset now and maybe let him tell a few other stories, because I really, really like what he puts on screen. And I think if they can lock him up long term and keep him as sort of a contracted writer, director, producer, everything else in between, I think it would be very smart for Disney and Star Wars to do that, because he's very, very talented behind the camera, and just the tone that this show has is so unlike everything else. So if they could build more of this more realized, realistic, stripped back world, I'd be all for it. So just back up the Brinks truck and give him whatever he needs to keep him on the books, because I love what he's doing at the moment.
Totally. And then the last little fact I saw was Cassian's pistol or blaster is known as the Briar pistol, which was apparently first introduced in a video game, the Star Wars Dark Forces game in 1995, and then was brought forward into Star Wars Battlefront in 2015. But this is the first time it has been in a live-action series, which I thought was pretty cool. Nice little touchstone for us in the nerd culture gaming community.
That is cool. And like Star Wars, they love their iconic weapons and spacecraft and things like that. So this will probably go down in history as one of those types of weapons moving forward. And I like that they paid a bit of homage to the game franchise, because there's some great games out there, some a little less good, but there's, I think, maybe more hits than misses in the Star Wars gaming universe, which is kind of rare for film-based stuff to translate to screen and vice versa as well as it does.
Alrighty, so yeah, we're both very high on this, highly recommending people check out Andor. Outside of Andor, is there anything else that you've been watching that you would recommend, or anything that you're particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, like I consume far too much anime at the moment, so there's an absolute bucket load of anime either that's just finished up or sort of going through its current rotation. Like we've got season 6 of My Hero Academia out at the moment. A really cool sort of sports anime that's come out called Blue Lock, which is really interesting. Beast Tamer's fun. Your boy Kong Ming, which is a very interesting anime about one of the Chinese warlords getting teleported to present day and trying to become the tour manager of a budding pop starlet. It's got so much heart.
Interesting.
And it's so bizarre, but it is brilliant. And then there's a ton of other anime. I'm trying to think of other stuff, like the new season of Yellowstone's just on at the moment. I'm really, really loving the Dutton story. The 3rd season of Mythic Quest is on Apple TV Plus, which is also one of my favorites. But there's a lot of good stuff. Like I watched Wakanda Forever the other day. Really enjoyed that. Watched Black Adam. Kind of hated Black Adam, but that's, neither here nor there. But what about you? What else are you watching?
So I recently watched The Menu.
I've heard it's really good.
It is fantastic. Don't watch the trailer though. Whatever you do, don't.
Oh, see, I saw the trailer before. I think it might have been before Wakanda Forever the other day. So I've seen the trailer.
Oh no!
And it seems mad, but I'm all for it.
Yeah, the trailer gives away a lot, unfortunately. But
damn it.
Yeah. But still, highly recommended it because I'd seen the trailer and still loved it. But and I'm also looking forward to I Want to Dance with Somebody, the Whitney Houston movie coming up soon.
Mm-hmm.
The Whale, that looks phenomenal.
Yeah, with Brendan Fraser.
Yep. And then obviously the biggest one for us as gaming fans, The Last of Us next year. I can't see this show being a failure.
I think it's going to be very special. The fact that it's getting the HBO treatment and Neil Druckmann's still attached to it, I think it's going to be really great. And just seeing the trailer and some of these characters now realised in real life, it looks like it's going to be really special. So, we don't have to wait long at all for that. That's middle of January. I think it's the 19th or something like that. And
15th? 16th?
Somewhere around there. Either way, middle of January, you know, perfect sort of belated Christmas present. And I forgot to shout out to Chainsaw Man as another fantastic, bizarre, balls-to-the-wall anime that is well worth viewers and listeners' time.
Alrighty, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the commentary booth. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on podcast services and on YouTube. You can get the episodes early over on Patreon at patreon.com/JamieUpsMedia. You can follow me on social media at JamieUpsMedia and at Pario Magazine. And you can follow Brendan on Twitter at Brendan8bit and at WeAre8bit. Thanks for jumping on the show and good luck with everything coming up in the end of the year.
Really appreciate it, man. And yeah, listeners, do yourselves a favor and get Andor in your eyeballs as soon as you can. It's so great. And stay safe and stay happy this upcoming holiday season.
The Commentary Booth is a fan-funded production of Jamie Apps Media. You can support the podcast alongside our magazine, Pario Magazine, on Patreon at patreon.com/JamieAppsMedia. The following people supported at the publisher level or higher, and you cannot fathom how incredibly appreciative we are for their support.